So, welcome everyone. My name is Jan, and today we will talk about how do you manage a Scrum team. Let me start with a small introduction, and then I will show you a slideshow where I will try to answer this question for you, and then I will just plan to have a chat with you. Probably I start out with a monologue as usual, but then please do interrupt me, okay? And let's have a discussion. And at the end, we should have enough time for a Q&A. It's very welcome if you can turn on your cameras. It helps me because I see faces, so it's not like I already told my Scrum Ambassadors colleague, it's so weird, you know, if I don't see any faces, and it's like I'm here at home alone. And talking to myself, that's kind of weird. And with that, let's start then. Okay, so as just Peter said, there is a program in a program, the Scrum Ambassadors program within the Access Agile Festival. This is where you are, the bold shows. There's going to be Peter's and Janani's talk later today, and tomorrow there's going to be 3 others. You can take a look at the link, Scrum Ambassadors/beginners, all this sub-program, let's say. So if you are interested, you are very welcome to join my other Scrum Ambassadors colleagues' talks. So not every one of you were here when Peter introduced Scrum Ambassadors. We are basically a loose alliance, so to say, of independent Agile coaches, and we have allied ourselves in order to spread the word worldwide about proper agility and Scrum. And this is who we are currently. Let's say some half of us already present in this festival, so please join us. This is me, Jan Farkas. I'm the co-founder and co-owner of Agile Consulting. The headquarters is in Zurich. And what we do is basically we focus on European tech companies, especially companies that are interested in innovation. We focus on bringing them their leaders to have real impact by implementing agility in their own personal lives, professional lives, and also within their team. So once we've done that, then these leaders are ready to create their own leadership teams, which we have to coach. And with the guidance of those leadership teams, we bring up delivery teams who deliver value within the organization. And at the end, when we are successful, we end up with an organization that is human and innovative in nature and in culture. Okay, so that's our focus. And that's also why I will talk to you today about how to manage a Scrum team. These are some contacts and links that you might find interesting. Agile Consulting is my company's website. I have a blog, Farkas on Innovation. I should update it more often, but you might find already some interesting read, especially on Scrum. So if you are specifically interested in Scrum, just filter all the blog articles, and you can find some articles, for example, on how to run Scrum events, which will be partially touched by Peter and Janani. And then there is the Scrum Ambassadors page. If you want to contact me, you can use my email address. You can connect with me in LinkedIn, or you can just simply schedule with me a Zoom call. You find this link on our website as well. All right. So I said that I will start with a slideshow where I will answer this question: how do you manage a Scrum team? I don't know how many of you can use your hands up, or you can use the user interface of Zoom. How many are you are actual leaders in an organization. So either, let's say, from team lead to CEO. Just let's get a feeling about this. Okay, I don't see much activity. If you are not, then basically what this will tell you is what you shall expect from appointed management if you are a part of a Scrum team. On the other hand, if you just didn't put up your hand, but actually you are a leader in an organization, then what I will talk to you about is how you really should relate in terms of leadership and management to your Scrum teams if you want your Scrum teams to be run properly. Okay, so let's start with the slideshow. How do you manage a Scrum team? You don't manage a Scrum team. But really. Thank you. So that was my slideshow. I really hope that the message goes through how you shall relate to a Scrum team when it's about management. I don't know how happy you are with the answer. So I was thinking of going a bit into the details, but for that we need to go a bit into the details what management really is and how we relate to management when we talk about Scrum in general. For this, I will draw you a bit, and I would like to ask you that if you don't see what I'm drawing or what I'm talking about, because sometimes, I'm trying to look at your faces, so I just barely see what's on the screen, please do let me know to move the drawing, okay? So let's talk about management. What do managers do in their everyday work? Typically, they organize work to some extent. So what they do is basically they break down work and organize the delivery of work. This means that, for example, you might come with work packages and you have to figure out in this chaos who is doing what, with whom, when, and how. You allocate resources, you plan the capacity, and as part of it, if you are a manager in an organization, that people come to you with holiday requests and you take them off so you can track, okay, what's the capacity of the team? This is organizing work. Won't be a complete picture, by the way, because we leaders do a lot of things, right? So the second thing leaders typically do is that they hire people. They hire people, they evaluate them. This is ongoing already in the hiring process, right? During the interview, who is the right match for the job. But this is also ongoing when you already hired somebody. And then you give feedback, you sometimes evaluate. Typical thing is the performance review, which is sometimes annual performance review. And sometimes you have to fire the people. It's also a lot of complexity in this. And you have to solve this big set of problems. Now, the third one, what we typically do is once we have people in our team as leaders, then we support these people and develop them. Now, including this support is motivating people. How do you motivate people? That's a very hard question. Then how do you facilitate that people work properly together with each other? How do you identify what skills the people need? How do you buy and arrange, for example, trainings, coachings, and so on? Simply buying books. It's all a question that we have to figure out. As support, also, there's a lot of mentoring, coaching, and in general guidance that is expected from an appointed leader of a team. Then, it's not an easy job. So number 4 now, we care about processes and tools. Now, with these processes and tools, which processes and tools are proper for what our team members are trying to do? Are they using it right? Is this still the best process? Is it optimal? Then, how do you track if it is? Are the plans right? Part of processes, planning, tracking, monitoring, reporting. This is all something you expect from leader to do. And finally, again, not a complete picture, what you expect from leaders is that they communicate and align. That's true both internally and externally. So you have to make sure that you know where your team is, you communicate within the team, but also you have to make sure that your team and team members are aligned with the others outside of the organization. Now, I have drawn all these topics as a big bunch of chaos here, if you will, because if you don't have a structured approach on how to handle these problems, that is, where we are currently, where we want to go, what we need to focus on, what are the things we need to do in all these topics, then what you will end up with is a big chaos, and you will have a lot of urgent stuff to do, problems will pop up, and then you will be in firefighting mode and always jump on the most urgent things, probably not the most important thing. So what is very important is that in all these management activities, what managers typically do, the real management is what we call management happens here. When you convert chaos into something that is orderly, when you bring structure to the work. But what you also see here is that this part of work, so for example, the work organization, who is doing what, it's going in this direction. On the other hand, the people you hire and how you evaluate them is going in a different direction. So if you don't pay attention, you can create order in the chaos, but there's going to be no alignment between these different tasks you need to do as a leader. So there's the second part of the magic that is happening at this point. When you say, let's take a look at all these important things we need to do as a team lead, and as an organization, and let's make sure that they are actually aligned, they enhance and strengthen each other, and let's make sure they point towards all the same direction. For that, of course, you need to know which direction is that direction. So there needs to be people who actually are able to tell the direction in which we as a team or an organization go, and make sure that everything that's happening within the team and the organization move in that direction. The magic happening here is called leadership. In agility, and so also in Scrum, we are very much concerned with two types of leadership, or let's say the two most important phases of leadership. One is leading by purpose. And this is basically telling the direction. Leading by purpose means that you know what you are here for. It's the ultimate answer to why we come to work, what we are trying to accomplish, who do we serve, What kind of value do we produce? The other one is servant leadership. That is, once we have set a direction, then we ask the people who can actually get there, how can we help you as leaders? How do we create an organization that is actually creating the environment that is the best for you to be able to get this direction? So what managers typically tend to do, whether we are talking about line managers, project managers, the CEO, or whomever, is falling in either one of these categories. Either they are doing leadership, or they are doing management, that is bringing order to chaos. Since we are talking about agility and Scrum teams, we can say in the Agile Manifesto's style that in agility, we value leadership over management. That is, while management, there is value in management, we value leadership more. So just like in everything in the Agile Manifesto, here we don't say that, when I said we don't manage Scrum teams as persons, we are not saying that management is not important. So you already have the idea that without this portion of the work, without bringing order to chaos, there is no way that you are able to see where you are. There is no way you can help your people going in the right direction. So management is important, but it's distributed within an agile organization. Yet, if leadership is not there, then you can't distribute management. And that's why leadership, proper leadership, that is creating the proper purpose and serving the people, is essential in order for you to enable to create an agile organization. All right. And from this point on, I will just go into free talk mode if you don't mind. And again, just, as usual, stop me anytime. So we talked about leadership, we talked about management. The next thing, since we talked about Scrum teams, let's take a look at how management and how leadership looks like in a Scrum environment, okay? There are two key points to this. One is how management and leadership looks like within a Scrum team. So basically, this is one kind of an answer of how do you manage a Scrum team? Well, you become part of that Scrum team. On the other hand, you will still not manage it because you don't manage it as a person. You will become the part of the team that is managing the Scrum team. That's the Scrum team itself. So let's take a look at how management and leadership looks like within a Scrum team. And then what we will take a look at is the leadership teams that are external to the Scrum team. How can they support their Scrum teams with proper management and leadership? First topic, how leadership and management happens within a Scrum team. There are three roles in Scrum, accountabilities as we call it from last year. These accountabilities are the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the developer, as you know. What we say is that in Scrum, in general, in all agile organizations, we expect to some extent self-management and leadership from everybody within the organization. How product owners lead. That's pretty obvious. If you take a look at leading by purpose, then it's the product owner who owns the product's vision. In which direction the product should go? Who do we serve with that particular product? What does value mean when we are talking about that product? That needs a lot of information. The product owner talks with a lot of stakeholders and condenses down all this information, all this knowledge into the product backlog. So this is leading by purpose from the product owner side. servant leadership from the product owner side is oftentimes forgotten, so to say. When you look at a properly run Scrum team, what you see is that the product owner is a member of a team. In many badly set up teams, they relate to the Scrum, they relate to the product owner as some kind of a boss, as some kind of a manager, which it is not, because the Scrum team is managing itself, so it can't have any managers, and the product owner is not a manager of the Scrum team. But the product owner serves the team with this particular aim of, let's figure out what is valuable for the Scrum team. This is a lot of legwork. If you are a developer, which means you are a problem solver in a Scrum team, that what you want is you have a complex problem at hand. You want to be able to go into flow, and you want to be able to concentrate on solving the problem at hand. If you are about to figure out what is valuable in your context for the Scrum team, though, then instead of this, you have to talk and talk a lot. You will go to people and ask them. You will go to customers, you will go to management, you will go to other teams, you will go to other product owners who are responsible for other products that are related to your product, and so on. That's talking a lot. To make things worse, everybody will know that you are the owner of your product. So if they have questions, if they have views on your product, they know who to come to. It's you, the product owner. So you will be always disturbed, so to say. It's really not disturbing, but you will be always contacted by stakeholders who would like to share ideas with you, make sure that the priorities are right, and so on. So if a developer would do this, then the developer couldn't do the developer's job solving the problem. The product owner serves the team by doing this job so that the team as a whole has a clearer view of what is valuable and what is not valuable. Okay, that's service. Good. Next step, Scrum Master. For the Scrum Master, oftentimes classically we define the Scrum Master as is the servant leader of the team. I don't like particularly this definition of the Scrum Master, because I think, yeah.
Can I pull you back?
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. Thank you. My question is, in a team where you don't have a dedicated PO, so how does that team function?
Well, it depends. What do you mean under you don't have a dedicated PO? Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Yes. Okay. Currently, I'm actually working as a Scrum Master. Yeah. We don't have a dedicated PO. So the PO is actually split amongst different teams. So when we need something done from the PO, it's not available. So that has been a bit of a struggle for me as a Scrum Master, right? Because he's not there. So even if I joined the developers, they were actually taking up the responsibility, yeah, to do the PO's job. So when I came, I had to take some of those bits away from there so that they can focus on the development work. So how do you address this sort of issue where you don't have a dedicated PO to run the backlog?
Mm-hmm. So if I understand it right, then the PO is responsible for multiple teams. That is, multiple teams
Correct.
are working from the backlog of this particular PO, right?
Yes, different backlogs, not just one. My backlog is different. So the PO is actually managing another backlog, yeah, for a different team. So when we need him, for example, for refinement, it's not there. So how do you do refinement without the PO? So we don't know the business priorities.
Okay, yeah, clearly you've got a problem.
Yeah, so, I know I've got a problem, that's what I'm here.
Yeah, you do need an accessible PO. Otherwise, if you are a team member then if the PO is not accessible, then one of the most important stakeholder, the team actually, who needs to align what is the problem we are trying to solve, cannot align. That is, they don't have a proper understanding of the context and then value. And like it or not, developers do make decisions, multiple decisions every day. And what you want to make sure is that those decisions are aligned with what is valuable. So you want, as a PO, and in general as an organization, that everybody from the teams, all the teams, understand what is valuable and what is not. Right. If you don't have access to the PO, you can't do that. So you have to have access to the PO.
Agree. Yeah.
Now, when you scale, that is when you have multiple Scrum teams, there is usually, that's my suggestion always. If you take a look at the availability of the PO, that tells you basically if a single PO is still enough to handle the problem at hand. At the point the PO is not anymore accessible to people, that's the point where the PO needs help. That is an additional PO, typically scaling the PO role. There are various ways to do that. And in general, stopping and thinking about how can I be, as a PO, myself or with my PO team now, accessible to all the important stakeholders. Because the PO also has to go to customers, oftentimes talks a lot with management and so on. So,
right.
So probably in your situation, one PO is not enough anymore.
Agree. Yeah. Right.
Of course, and thank you for the question. Of course, I'm trying to answer questions with the little knowledge I have about your particular situation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
But
hey,
yeah, this usually needs a deeper discussion.
Yeah.
Could I just jump in here for a second? And just to say yes, and this almost surely needs a deeper discussion. This could be a symptom of all kinds of interesting problems. And exactly which one it is, well, that kind of depends. I put a link in the chat. We're going to be doing problem solving sessions tomorrow. And this might be a question for that group. So I'd like to encourage you to, check it out. And, maybe we can take a look at that one tomorrow.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
And there we probably also have a little bit of a, let's say, more time to dig deeper into your ecosystem. Okay, great. So that was for the product owner. Let's take a look at how leadership and management looks like for the Scrum Master. Oh, by the way, I haven't even talked about management for the PO. So management in general is bringing order where there was none, right? We all know that the product owner manages the backlog. So to bring priorities, to bring this orderly view of what is valuable, what is not, to properly phrase a product backlog item. So it's a good expression of what is the problem we are trying to solve, to set up acceptance criteria and so on. All these discussions, for example, refinement, what you just mentioned, Dempsey, is all bringing order into chaos. So this is all the management stuff that the PO does. Okay, so for the Scrum Master, the leadership part, especially the leading by purpose, is oftentimes forgotten, in a sense that we say the Scrum Master is the servant leader of the team. The Scrum Master does everything the team needs. Well, not quite so. The Scrum Master holds the vision for where the team is and where the team should be. Okay? So the Scrum Master has to have a good idea of what a great team means. What a great team means for this particular team I'm a Scrum Master of, where this team is and where this team should be in the future or could be in the future, and how can I as a Scrum Master guide the team there. So there's a vision about what a great team means, and the holder of that vision is the Scrum Master. So there is leading by purpose from the Scrum Master side. It's just the vision is not about the actual work, the actual value generation in this particular context of what is the content the team is generating, but it's more about meta work, that is the culture of the organization, how we get things done around here. That is organizational culture by definition. So the Scrum Masters hold the vision for a proper organization that is a great organization for Scrum teams to work in. And they also hold the vision for this particular team. And of course, then guiding the team there, being part of a great team is just, you know, the best feeling. If you want to work ever in a great environment, then a great Scrum team is a very good environment for that. So it's a great service from the Scrum Master to escort the team from where they are into great team. And for management, Scrum Masters are typically associated, for example, with identifying and removing impediments. Well, again, it's the whole team who should be able to identify and remove impediments, but it's the Scrum Master who, as a management task, can actually track those improvements and make sure that what the team identified as impediments and the actions they've decided to take on improving themselves, that these actions are followed up, they are taken. So for example, a typical example is you choose a Kaizen. Sometimes it's called the Kaizen, the single point of improvement, the single focus of improvement in the next sprint. The team defines actions. Okay, if this is our single point of improvement or single focus of improvement for the next sprint, which actions we want to take to become a better Scrum team. And then it's the Scrum Master who registers this and comes back in the next refinement, in the next retrospective. Okay, did you really do these actions? Did they work? Now that you've done these actions, where do you think you are? Is the problem still a problem? Was it solved? It's kind of a management task as well, right? It brings order, which basically links one sprint to the other in terms of continuous improvement. Good. And at the end, now there's the developer. Probably the most interesting person in an agile organization, because an agile organization is about solving complex problems, and it's actually the developers who do that. So when we talk about developers, we talk about craftsmanship. That is, all the skills, all the knowledge, and all the mindset that is needed to solve the complex problem in the specific domain the developer is working in. Don't think that it's software development only. If it is software development, it's a software development problem we have, then craftsmanship is software craftsmanship, but it can be anything else. If it's a marketing Scrum team, for example, who is about to set up a marketing campaign with high impact, then the developer will be a marketing expert who's working on that team. So it can be whatever, but what matters is that to have this craftsmanship view, craftsmanship mindset for the developer. So what is in craftsmanship is how to solve problems in a great way. Typical thing is quality. Quality is part of craftsmanship. So it's the developer who has the vision of what a great piece of work means in my domain, in my context. What quality means. What is the product, whatever product I'm working on, which I, as a craftsman, I'm happy to hand over to the customer. This all comes from the developer. They discuss it with the product owner, of course, but these things come from the developer, and there's a vision for what great craftsmanship means in the developer's side. Depending on which skills you actually need in a Scrum team, you have a cross-functional team. So there's a plethora of skills usually you need in order to solve complex problems. That's why you need a team in the first place. Some are experts in some skills, some are experts in another skill. It's the developer's responsibility to take the lead to step up, to identify when their skills are needed and step up as the leader until their skills are the best skills that are needed to propel the solution of the problem forward. On the other hand, it's also the responsibility of the developer to be allowed to be led when somebody else has those key skills. So this is for visionary leadership. This is for stepping up as a leader, if you are a developer. And of course, with all this, you serve the team to become a greater version of itself. So that's how leadership happens, both leading by purpose and on servant leadership. Management on the development side, that's probably the most important thing. Now, this is why you don't manage a Scrum team, because you want the Scrum team to manage itself. Management is when the Scrum team as a unit, and especially the developers, figure out how to solve the problem. So the work breakdown, so to say, what activities, what tasks we need to take as a team in order to solve the problem, that is done by the developers themselves as a team effort. Who is doing what with whom, by when, and how? This is all management tasks done by the developers themselves. Almost all the things a line manager does is a classical organization is done, and this management is done by the team itself. So I gave you quite some example in my drawing. Hiring, for example, identifying when we lack a skill, identifying if hiring is the best solution, done by the team. Upskilling, identifying for a lack of skill and identifying a way to upskill, done by the team. Interviewing, done by the team. Evaluation, giving feedback to peers, and so on, all done by the team. Supporting each other, motivating each other, done by the team. Choosing the proper processes, updating them, making sure that these fit for purpose, done by the team. Choosing tools, done by the team. Alignment. So a lot of things that belongs to a line manager's task typically. There is an agile equivalent to it. Basically, we can say the classical line manager's agile equivalent is the Scrum team itself as a unit. If you want the Scrum team to be able to manage itself, then you should stop trying to manage it. And that's why the ultimate answer to this question, how do you manage a Scrum team? You don't manage a Scrum team. Is that because you want the Scrum team to manage itself? Instead, you have to create an environment in which this is possible. Okay, that's management and leadership within the Scrum team. Any questions before I go to leadership teams as a topic?
Yeah, I think I've got a question. And there's something you said about the Scrum Master being the vision carrier of the team, not the PO, right? Not the product owner. I was actually thinking that it was the PO that is supposed to be carrying the vision of the team, not the Scrum Master. I thought the Scrum Master should just focus on the process, on getting to that vision that was given to the team. I don't know.
Okay, not quite. The reason for this also, yes, in the Scrum Guide, there is some say about let's say some association between the process and the Scrum Master. What the Scrum Guide means actually is the process of Scrum itself. So this, you expect from the Scrum Master that the Scrum Master is an expert on Scrum, but the actual processes the team needs, it's the team who uses it. It actually comes from Lean. In scientific management, which is, let's say, the history of all this coming from around the 1900s, was that, okay, I create a role manager in order to observe the worker and to optimize the process with which the worker is generating value.
Yeah.
Now, what we said in Lean, the Toyota production system, is that, okay, well, actually the best situated person to identify potential improvements to the processes is the worker itself.
Right.
In Agile, we do the same, but we focus more on teams and not necessarily the individuals. So now it's the teams who identify what kind of processes they need, if they need any, so there's no bloat. Sometimes if they are imposed from outside, it's bloat, it's to exert control actually, which is management.
Yeah.
Instead, you expect the team to manage themselves, so they identify these processes they need, and they are now responsible for those processes to be fit for purpose. So for example, if the team is responsible for quality, which it is, as it's part of craftsmanship, then they have to figure out what, for example, in testing or validation, what steps you need to go through in order to ensure that the output is of proper quality. The team is now responsible for that. Or if it's a team that has a support role, for example, it's a team developing something other teams use, then it's an internal support role. Then you can identify a process which helps you to track and to support the other teams well. The interesting thing is you don't say that you need these processes to do your work. It's either the team who identifies they need this interaction or need these processes for the proper supporting interaction. And if they do identify it, then they identify exactly how the process should look like. The good thing is that if the process they come up with is not fit for the purpose, then it will come up in the next retrospective. So it will continuously improve.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So it's a tricky point when you talk about processes and the Scrum Master. Yes, it's in that regard, it's Scrum, but Scrum is way more than a process. So it's a bit misleading. I don't necessarily like that phrasing in the Scrum Guide, frankly.
Can I add something really quick? When he said carry the vision, I know that you were putting the vision with the product owner. The vision is created by the product owner, I believe, but the Scrum Master does carry. Creating and carrying the vision are two different things. So just if there's a lapse of like communication with languages, carrying and creating, two different things.
Yes, I think, Jack, thank you so much. I think you actually just cleared it, to be honest. Yes, there's carrying and there's creating. So the PO actually creates the vision. Then the Scrum Master actually carry the vision with the team to that destination. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay, one important thing is that is how you discern these two things. The product owner is the owner of the product and such the product vision. What I said about the Scrum Master is the Scrum Master is the holder of the vision for the way of working for the team. Okay, so there's a difference between the product the team is delivering and the team itself. Frederick, long time no see, by the way. Hello.
Yeah, hi. I wanted to add the same for clarification. It's you have product vision and vision where you want to grow as a team. And I think a Scrum team should also ask themselves, like, what is a better version of ourselves on the longer term? And I think that very much has to do with the kind of feedback loops that you should very much aware of in a team. You have a feedback loop on improving your product, but you also have a feedback loop on improving as a team. And that aspect is very often, I think, neglected as well. So I wanted to add that as clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Frederick.
Thank you. Peter?
Yeah, I put a link to a video from a guy named Marcel van Hove. He's an Australian. Actually, he's a visual facilitator. And he did a video on the Scrum Master and kind of what's the vision for the Scrum Master. And this is the most elegant presentation of what is the role of a Scrum Master or an Agile coach that I've ever seen. And it puts the the responsibility for the development of the team as a team squarely in the lap of the Scrum Master. So, the link is there. It's about a 10-minute YouTube video. I've been using it in my classes for almost as long as I've been teaching Scrum. So I highly recommend it. One of the reasons why you see that the product owner is not responsible for the team is the product owner gets to make decisions about the product backlog. If the decision can be reflected in the product backlog in this description of the future version of the product, then it belongs to the product owner. And the team isn't really part of the product backlog. So.
Right.
And then you can ask why. Why do you do this separation? The reason for that is why you don't want mixed roles, basically. Why you want a Scrum Master, why you want a product owner, at least at the same time, they shouldn't mix. And the reason for that is exactly because creating this vision, or for example, what the PO does is talking with everybody, figuring out what value is, prioritizing, creating great backlog items. So it's a full-time job. And so you want somebody who's focusing on that so that you make sure that this job is done. And same goes for the developers. You want people who go into flow and are able to solve in this state of mind, basically solve the problem. And then the third one is that you want to make sure that you have a team coach, a Scrum Master, who is squarely focused on making the team a better version of itself sprint by sprint. That's very important, because if you don't have that, then typically a team plateaus out. So they just become, good enough. And then this aspect, if there is no dedicated role for that to make sure the team grows beyond this plateau, if there is no dedicated role for that, the team plateaus out very quickly, and it will become a good enough team, but it will never become a great team. This is the hard part, actually, of the Scrum Master, what to do when your team plateaued out.
Yeah, my team is actually plateauing out right now, to be honest.
Okay, let me fix my autofocus. Good. All right, so very quickly about leadership teams. There are teams in an organization which could consist of, or there can be teams in an organization which consist of appointed leaders. The interesting thing is that you can actually make real agile teams from leaders of an organization. So currently I'm coaching 2 of such teams, and it's very interesting to see.
I just wanted to check in. Are you sharing something?
No.
Okay, cool.
Okay, thank you. No, it was just a usual autofocus problem of my cam, so I turned it on and off. So what is very interesting is that, first of all, they are a team responsible for the organization, depending on where this leadership is. It can be, for example, on the department level, or it can be even the CEO and the CEO's team. A great read on that is Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team, by the way, how such a CEO team could work. But anyway, the interesting thing is, from Scrum's perspective, is that you can run such a leadership team with Scrum. And then they become a Scrum team, so they have leadership and management responsibilities as a Scrum team for themselves. That is, they are managing themselves as a team. On the other hand, basically their product is the organization itself. So there is let's say, an enhanced presence of leadership for such teams. So what these leadership's product is the organization, and so for that reason, the leading by purpose means that they forge the purpose statement and keep it alive and communicate the purpose statement of their organization. That's a very important. Yes, Peter? Okay.
Sorry, that was a local interruption.
Okay. So that's one thing that ends up in their backlog as a leadership team. I usually refer to that as an organization backlog. It's a product backlog. The product is the organization. So one thing that ends up in this backlog of a leadership team is the leading by purpose part, when they make sure that there is a proper purpose statement of the organization, that it's communicated properly, that there is alignment between the teams of the organization. For example, the organization is set up in a way that there can be an alignment between the product owners on the vision of the various products, for example, within a product line. Or from the Scrum Master side, there is an alignment of the vision of how this organization could and should look like in the future, and so on. Now, from the servant leadership part, these teams are actually serving the teams within the organization. Typical example is when there is an impediment coming up from a team that the team cannot solve. Typical example, we have no idea how what we work on at the moment links to the purpose of the organization. No clue. We don't see where we create vision, if that's where we create value, if this is the organization's purpose. This is an impediment the team by itself can't solve usually. So they raise this impediment, and this impediment ends up on the desk of such a leadership team. And the service of the leadership team to this team who had this impediment is to resolve this impediment. This is usually discussing, okay, where the problem is, where the gap is. Is there a problem with the purpose statement? Is there a problem with what you are doing? Or is there a problem with our communication and alignment efforts? That you can't make this link, and so on. Okay, what is very important here? Such leadership teams can lead an agile organization the best if they lead by example. So if you say, I'm a leader of the organization, I'm the CEO, and Scrum is a great way, you guys should do Scrum. The first thing you should do is form your own Scrum team. Lead the leadership team or operate the leadership team with Scrum. At least try. You know, it's very tricky to say what you should do, which I never did. Typical example, Agile or Scrum in the trenches, when top management says, now you guys all do Scrum. And we work like we always did. We go around in our functional separation. I'm a finance expert, so I go and do the finance for the organization. I don't know, an HR expert. I care about the HR policies and so on. Not a very good thing to do. Form your own agile team, try to be cross-functional and feel what it really feels like to be a part of an agile team. Frederick, did you want to say something?
I have a question because I've come across a situation and there always came this practical question: who is the product owner? If you set, if you want to form a Scrum team of a management or leadership team, so is that then, is that someone who takes the role of product owner, who is like a chief product owner of, you know, someone who already has a role in the organization, or is it the CEO? You know, sometimes there is a possible conflict of interest there. So who becomes the product owner?
Yeah, so owning the organization is different than owning the product line itself, right? So if you have a chief product owner, then usually it's something like an owner of the whole product line or the products, the department comes. So this is an important thing that should be channeled into a leadership team. That's why usually such a chief product owner is part of the leadership team, but usually that's not the organization owner. So for example, it could be a CTO in your situation, or a CIO or whatever, while the CEO can own the organization. What I've seen in practice mostly is that this is a special case, leadership teams, where the owner of the organization, the owner of the backlog of that team, is also delivering stuff, because without that person, decisions can't be made. So how they alleviate the problem of, as an organization owner, I have a lot of talks to do and a lot of job to do, but I also have to deliver, is that, as in the Scrum guide, as a PO, you can delegate things to POing, basically some parts of POing, that is management part usually of the backlog, to team members. And so that reduces the load on the organization owner on terms of management, and then they can also contribute. That's one way to do it. This is what I've seen most often. Peter.
Yeah, I was just going to, add a couple of examples. The only case I know where an organization really set out to organize itself as a Scrum team was the Scrum Master. Was the Scrum Alliance. They did a reorg about, I think, 2 years ago now. And they decided to have a chief product owner and a chief Scrum Master. And the two of them together, legally, they were the CEO role. So they actually had a job sharing for the, kind of the chief executive role in the company. What I've seen in my own companies or my own, work with executive teams is that the, how shall I say this? The Scrum is kind of a part-time effort for the executive team. That is, it's not that all of their work is managed with the through Scrum, but more the transformation of the organization is managed through Scrum, and the daily business is still the daily business and kind of organized the same way it always was. And here, I've seen varying degrees of sometimes the product owner has been a really strong role, kind of like you'd expect a product owner to be in a large organization where it says, okay, this is where we got to go. But more often I've seen it more as kind of a first among equals collaborative role, kind of responsible for the vision, but all of the executive team members, these are people who are in their position because they're good at solving problems, and that's what Scrum teams do. So it gets to be a bit more collaborative than you sometimes see in a development team. That's been my experience, at least.
Yeah, and I agree, Peter, that this is usually where it starts from, that the scope of the leadership team is usually not leading the whole organization, but for example, in an Agile initiative or the first Agile teams. On the other hand, I had the opportunity to coach leadership teams from this position to the position where really the whole sub-organization, a whole department of, let's say, 100 people are properly led by a Scrum team of leaders all the way along, which is pretty fascinating. You can imagine that with such leading by example, it's much easier to get people on board on Scrum and to communicate in their language because you talk from experience. Okay, so that's about leadership team. I also wanted to talk a bit, if it's something of interest to you, what happens to line managers in a pure Agile organization, what happens to project managers, and maybe what happens to product managers. That could also be interesting. So let's say what I will now mention is the ultimate direction I direct my clients in, but it's not something you do from one day to the other. Okay, so it's doable. I've seen it done, and it has very good results. But it's not something that now we go Agile and we for example shut down all projects and fire all project managers. That's not something you want to do. Okay, so first of all, line managers. As we said, the Agile and Scrum equivalent of line management is the Scrum team. The question then is, do you need line managers? Well, actually you don't. You can perfectly operate without line managers. There are some things that line managers do, which is more of an administrative nature. So for example, typical, somebody has to register who is going on holidays when. Somebody just signs that up so it's captured in the system. In a classical organization, you tell, if you want to take holidays, you go to your line manager and ask for a signature. Can I go on holidays? In a Scrum team, it's discussed within the team, and if the team agrees that okay, that person is okay, that he or she can go to 2 weeks of holidays at that time, then it's just an administrative task that is remaining to register this fact in the system. So in some cases, basically line management is reduced to this administrative role. You don't really need it even. You can just say, okay, from every Scrum team, there's an admin or the Scrum Master itself who can do this. No problem. So you can run an organization without line managers. What happens to the line managers then? Do you fire them? Nope. but it depends. Let me come back to this when we talk about project managers. What happens to project managers? In an agile organization, we want to focus on value, and the value is in the products. The problem with projects is that projects are internal facing. Projects are about what we can do as an organization, where our resources are, how can we allocate these resources, when our deadlines are, how can we make sure that we are on scope and all these things. But actually, you should focus as an agile organization in the product and what value this gives to your customers. So in reality, you don't need projects. If you don't have projects, then obviously you don't need project management. Management is anyway done by the team, and then you don't need project managers either. Now, does it mean that in an agile transformation you fire the project managers? No. Does it mean that in an agile transformation you fire line managers? No. The thing is that instead of the way you operated in the past, which needed certain skills, now you will operate the organization in a different way, which again needs certain skills. And these skills themselves have a huge overlap. So, for example, if you have a project manager who identifies herself or himself as a project manager who is the, let's say, epitome of project management, the only thing he or she can do is and wants to do, most importantly, is classical project management, then you've got a problem. Then you don't need that person in a completely agile organization running without projects. But this is very rarely the case. In most cases, people don't see themselves as the equivalent of their titles. So a project manager already has a lot of skills, which either makes him a great product owner or a great Scrum Master. Line managers usually have skills that either make them a great Scrum Master or a great developer. Imagine, it's a kind reminder that in an agile organization, developers are not subordinates of POs and Scrum Masters. These are all team members of a Scrum team. So being a developer is actually not a demotion. That's extremely important, that you don't disown managers and engineers or managers and developers from each other. There is no manager, so everybody is a manager. So the problem solvers are actually as much important as anybody else in the organization. So line manager can become, for example, a senior developer. Perfect, no problem. These are the typical situations. For product management, it's also tricky because product managers are, what a product manager typically does is usually handled either by the POs, or if the POs form a pseudo team, which is sometimes called Meta Scrum, then they might have some additional help, let's say from people who directly work for the POs, but usually you don't need separate product managers. So in this case, product management is also something that might turn into something else, for example, product ownership or something like that. What is important here is that oftentimes in organizations who employ product managers, there is a separation of the customer. Let's say the customer access is only available for a few people like sales and product managers, why R&D, development, and so on is separated from direct customer access. That's not something we want in agility, because we want all the teams, as we talked about, to understand what is value, and for that they need to understand the customer actually. So you want to break down these indirections from developers, problem solvers to the customer, and oftentimes having product managers there are part of this indirection. Not necessarily, but oftentimes. Okay, so that's for line management, product management, and project management. And this is basically what I wanted to talk about today. And I would like to open the stage for questions. Peter, you have something to say?
Yes, well, I thought there was a lot of interesting things that I heard. I actually thought your last statement was well, you finished up with two things that were very interesting. One is the idea that being a developer is not a demotion. And that's kind of an interesting concept because Agile is a kind of a non-hierarchical framework, but our lives are all about hierarchies, and in particularly our personal compensation is often, related to our progress through a career path. But that's actually not what I wanted to ask about, because the other thing was the difference between product management and product ownership. So I've heard a lot of different opinions on this. I remember Borland saying that product management and product ownership was kind of too big for one job or for one person because there was so much work involved. And so they ended up having a product manager who was more outward facing and a product owner who was more inward facing. But these two people were almost doing a job sharing, okay? And it was very, very important that the two of them spoke with one voice. So, one had more the one clientele, the other had more the other clientele, but, they were very much a partnership, saw their work very much as a partnership. I just saw a talk from a former product manager at Spotify, who basically went up through the ranks. I think he came on as a developer, became a Scrum Master, then became a product owner, eventually became a product manager. And he thought that one of the key differences between being a product owner and a product manager is the product owner is more focused on tactical things. Okay, that is working with the backlog and the team and that sort of thing kind of bogs you down. And as a product manager, you need to be thinking more about, well, what is the strategic positioning of this product versus that product, or this platform versus that platform? And what about our partnerships in the market? So he saw product management as being more of a big picture, and less about the product itself and more about its place in the universe than product ownership. So, what are you seeing on these? And from what I heard from you is that, well, product management, there's this Venn diagram, between the two, and about 80 or 90% of them are the same. And so kind of why not make them one person? That's kind of the message I got from you. So how do you see this?
Okay, yeah, this is very interesting. So I think if you set up an organization like this, then it will become a self-fulfilling purpose. That okay, there is a dedicated role too within which is to be product ownership, which is okay, outward facing and inward facing, strategic and tactical. I think you should not set up upfront a system like that, because it's like that, and that's some kind of a separation. I think that it has to be the strategic and the tactical viewpoints and the outward and the inward facing viewpoints should be condensing into one role. That's the product owner, but it doesn't mean that a single person can handle this. So this comes back to Dempsey's question, actually, when your product owner is not enough anymore to handle the problems. It's when the product owner becomes unavailable, either because there is too much work on one side or the other side. And it really depends on the product owner. The product owner has to, and the teams actually have to be able to identify when this happens and come up with a solution which is the best fit for them. For example, it can be that you onboard another product owner who will be on the same product. Now, how they will share the work, they are in the best situation to decide. So you don't necessarily want to upfront say we have a product management and the product ownership separation. Maybe in some cases that's the best, maybe in some cases not. That's my general take on it.
Okay. So Frederick, I saw that you posted this guide from Roman Pichler. What's his perspective on it?
Well, it exactly depicts a bit what Jan is explaining, different options of when it's needed to scale product ownership. So in Scrum, we say a product owner looks after the product, but in practice, that isn't always that simple to organize it. So, a scaling option is, for example, if you have multiple if the product is that big, so huge, that you have multiple owners, but they each look after an area of the product. So you're splitting the product, but not necessarily the role. Another option is to actually split the role and its responsibilities, like more a strategic role and a tactical role. Some scaling frameworks do that. And another one is still to, if it's, to create some kind of product owner team or something. But then in organizations, I see a lot of other names, roles popping up, such as feature owner, component owner, whatever, epic owner, that are basically all kind of ways to try to organize that ownership. But it, it starts to, how you say it, to fragment a lot the ownership of the product. So so of course I have a personal opinion on that, but you really need to look into the context, what can help. So but I always try to explain, look out that you're not diminishing the strategic importance of your product owner role just by starting to split up those responsibilities and give it to different people.
When we talk about organizational design, thanks, Frederick. That's a very, very interesting input. When we talk about organizational design, and I think this is also what you say to some extent, both organizational design and product design, actually, in agility, we always aim to try to, let's say, to try first the simplest thing that could possibly work. And so there's a very good reason why in Scrum we have the separation of these three accountabilities. There's a very good reason for that. Everything that adds on it, you have to have such a good reason, a similarly good reason to do so. If you don't have such a very good reason why you want to separate these accountabilities, which we talked about, you want to make sure that there are people who focuses on this very important aspects of agility, the product, the team, and then solving the problem, then it's the best to try the simplest that could possibly work and only do something if it does not work. And by that time, you will know, okay, it does not work and it does not work because of this. So good. Any questions, any comments, anything from the audience? And I hope it was useful. I really don't know which is your background for each and every one of you. But I really hope that from this you can take out a few things, regardless if you are in a Scrum team as a developer or a Scrum Master or a product owner, or if you are a leader of an organization which is thinking, hey, can we use Scrum as a leadership team? I hope now you have an answer. Yes, absolutely. And then if you are at the very beginning of your agile journey as a manager, the best thing, the best advice I can give you is that always experiment in small scale. That's the key for agility. And in this, if your organization really did not start on the journey, then the smallest scale you can experiment on to figure out is agility for you and your organization is to experiment on yourself. And I think personal agility is the best way to do that, to start on this journey.
So that's kind of a nice lead in for a question. So what experiences have you been making with leaders who apply agility to themselves first?
Yeah, that's a bit of a different world, this is leading by example. So it's a completely different position where you are when you talk about backlogs, if you work from one, if you have one. It's a totally different position when you talk about priorities and you set priorities for your organization, when you know what a priority actually means and how powerful they can be. So experiencing agility firsthand gives you a totally different position when you lead people, because then you can say, hey people, I know what I'm talking about, I'm doing it, follow me. That's a completely different position than if you stand behind the army and say charge from behind the army. That's not a very good position you want to be, and that's not a position a leader can be in order to be effective, really.
So we just got a question in the chat from Uzoki, who's asking, what is actually the difference between managing a Scrum team and leading a Scrum team? With a friendly hint to be nice because she's still a beginner, or he is still I think she is still a beginner.
Yeah. So this was my drawing. Let me not turn on my other cam again. This was my drawing, right? And management happens here. Management is order from chaos by this definition. And this is something you want your team to do. While leadership, which your team can't do most often, sometimes they can actually in some organization, but this is very rare. Leadership happens here when you give a direction around which the team can organize itself, and then you have, by serving them, you have them to actually be able to manage properly themselves around that direction. Okay, so that's the main difference. So you want your teams to manage themselves, but still your teams do need leadership. There still needs to be a reason why they are there. There still needs to be a reason why they shall join your company and not the other company, your competitor, basically. And this is not something the teams can usually generate by themselves. It's the leader's task to create that single unifying purpose around which all the teams can rally around.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm traveling right now. Hope you can hear me. So I heard that when companies are implementing Agile or they already implemented Agile, they do not want to have project managers or people that have background as a project managers in the positions of Scrum Master. Just wanted to ask you for opinion on that, if you heard something similar. And also, if you can tell us about your journey and your career path. Where did you start with Agile? And sorry, my connection was breaking a little bit, so I didn't hear everything. Maybe you already talked about it.
No, I did not. Thank you. Okay, so I'm not sure I heard it right, but I think one question was, the first one is that making project managers Scrum Masters as a rule, or making project managers product owners, or making line managers Scrum Masters, whatever. Is that right? This is the question.
Question was, I've heard that business owners that are switching to Agile, they do not want to have someone with the project management background as a Scrum Master.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I get the question. So usually this is a very bad idea to exclude. Let's say when you take a path for change, to upfront exclude some options. It's a very bad idea. Typical idea is then, for example, when you say, okay, now we will do Scrum, so now we switch, all our line managers will become Scrum Masters. Very bad idea, because line management needs certain type of skills. Scrum Mastery needs certain types of skills. Maybe your particular line manager has what it takes to become a great Scrum Master and actually wants to be a Scrum Master, but maybe not. So this is not an idea, not a good idea. Again, for Scrum Masters, you don't want Scrum Masters to be project managers. Well, I have seen great project managers or good project managers who became great Scrum Masters, or great project managers who became great Scrum Masters. Project management is also something, you have your strengths and interests as a project manager, what you like to do, how you like to behave as a project manager. Some project managers define their role as a very supportive, very communication-based impediments removal, and so some project managers naturally focus on that area of their job, and so they would become great Scrum Masters. On the other hand, some project managers are really putting themselves in an administrative role, in a management role, tracking, reporting, administration, bureaucracy, and so on, which is also has its importance, but those people won't make a great Scrum Master, especially that many of these jobs want the team to do. So there is no prescription. It's really a human thing. Somebody fits a role great, and somebody does not, regardless of their previous title. It really doesn't depend on the title. It depends on the aspirations and the personality, I think, and the skills.
Thank you for the answer. One of the reasons I asked that is because project managers are sometimes excluded immediately when, that's what I've heard, when they apply for a job as a Scrum Master.
You have to do an interview, and if you know agility, you know how to ask the proper questions, and you have to know what you expect from a great Scrum Master, and then you can ask the proper questions, and you don't have to care about, it's usually better if somebody ever had an experience of being in a great team. That's for example very helpful. And then you can extract the views of the people. Okay, what the great team means, what made them a great team, how does a problem look like, a problematic team, what do you do when you have a problem, and so it's really not about were you a project manager or not. I think that's not a very clever way of acquiring the best talent, frankly. But Peter,
just a friendly reminder that we're hitting our time box here, which unfortunately I have to, this has been a great discussion. I want to thank you for a great talk and a very spontaneous, and I don't know if there's anyone here, who's, you never really know if there's someone alive at the other end, but if you're here, maybe let's give Jan a round of applause. I think this was a great talk, a lot of interesting discussion, a lot of interesting topics.
Thank you. And for Nenad, for my background, you can read it either on my LinkedIn or please take a look at the Farkas on innovation.
Thank you for
on the bottom, it is there. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And we'll be back on the same channel in about 30 minutes for the what really happens in sprint planning with Janani Lianage and myself, and hope you can join us there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Bye. See you.
Bye now.
See you.